Okay, so it's time for a new video. I didn't make a video last week. I got some kind of virus from hell and I'm only recovering. But today it's fine, so let's make a new video. So, as you saw by the title of today's video, surprisingly often what we want, what the soul wants rather, and what our partner, physical partner in life, whether your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, want, are two entirely different directions in life, two entirely different things. I'll read you something I wrote a few years ago about this, and then I'll give you examples of what happens when you heed the calling of the soul, of the feminine, because that's what we are talking about. When you actually finally give in and follow in the footsteps of the feminine, of the divine. Yeah? So this is what I wrote. I'll put my glasses on, otherwise too hard to read now. Surprisingly often, what our human partner and our inner partner in life, our divine part, the feminine mystery of the soul, want are two entirely different directions. Exactly. Hence, unless we are with someone who shares our deeper values, or we are left alone to follow our deeper calling, there can be terrible fights and misunderstandings. I'll share with you a few examples, which can and often do prolong our suffering of not being able to awake to who we really are and regrow our cultured clipped wings. Exactly. For as I keep repeating, the caterpillar cannot understand the butterfly. The caterpillar cannot understand the butterfly. Unless you are with someone who is doing the work, the spiritual work, like yourself, if you have this strong calling from within, for instance, that comes in dreams or intuitively, or synchronicities, or you had visions and things that are calling you inward, into your inner quest, and your partner doesn't understand this, or worse, fears, it can take years and years for you to actually finally give in and take up the journey, take up the calling, take up the invitation to look inward. I have known quite a few people like this who stay with someone who is possibly doesn't want to understand, but even worse, fears the unconscious, fears the soul for years and years and years. And the reason we stay is because we are afraid of being alone. Yeah, we're afraid that if we do leave the person, we are going to be left alone in the world, completely without any, access to relationships. But, like I've said in other videos, once you make that decision, and once you accept the insights, the visions, the dreams, the advice that is coming into you from within, from the soul, you will realize that you're never alone, because the inner self, the soul, is your partner in life. It has always been your real partner in life, but you have gone against it. Yeah? And then what can happen is, several things. Unless you're with, like I said, unless you're with someone that is willing to learn, is open to this, the soul can start to actually help you to get out of this relationship, so that you can be free to find someone who is more open to your own deep soul experiences. You see? Because if you can be in the biggest crowd, in the most loving place, sitting around the table with your whole family and your friends, and and they all, it's a very nice, warm environment. But unless these people have the same, I wouldn't even go to say far as to say experiences, because the experiences that some people have are very, very deep. So a lot of people won't have, a lot of other people won't have that kind of depth. But unless they have the same values and value what you value, or know, even better, to know what you already know, what you've already learned from your visions, from your dreams, from your studies, from your intuition, you're going to be alone. Even though you have people around you. You might, like I said, you might be in the most loving crowd, and people that are professing that, you know, they are your best friends, they are your family, they stand by you and all this. Unless they know what you know, you're gonna be alone. Yeah. So it's important to realize that most people stay in these relationships and don't look further for others that are more on the level of their own consciousness, out of fear of being alone. Yeah. So I'll give you a few examples of what happens when you do finally take up the invitation to go inward. And usually the invitation happens when you have been so disappointed by the outside, by society, by what's going on around you, your own life in society, that the only way out is in. That the only way out for you out of this terrible situation that you find yourself in, is to look inward. And Peter Kingsley has something interesting to say about this. I'll read that to you before I'll give you some examples of what happens when you finally, you know, give in to this calling within, and how that helps to find new friends, and how that helps to, initially, you know, you will feel like you have to be alone because the journey is inward. You can't take anyone with you inward. But the guide, the soul, is already there waiting for you, so you're never going to take the journey alone. And you don't have to take the journey alone, because the road is well mapped out, like Joseph Campbell has said. You know, the journey inward to recovery of the soul, it's not something new. People have been taking the same road for millennia. It just happens, you know, when it happens to you, the images and the events might seem different, but if you study mythology, if you study depth psychology, if you study folklore, if you study fairy tales, you will realize that your journey and the journey that is described in the myth is exactly the same. Just might be, you know, geographical locations are different, names are different, but the journey is exactly the same. Yeah. So we go into this inner we finally manage to detach ourselves from these situations that we find ourselves in outside life, which are not really right for us. But the soul really sets this up as well. You have to understand this, that we will set up on a situation where there's no way out for you. Wherever you go, to the left, it's no good. To the right, it's no good. If you go backward, it's even worse. If you go forward, it's the only way is in. And Peter Kingsley, you might be familiar with Peter Kingsley's work. He's a mystic, sort of a mystic. He's a writer. In the Dark Places of Wisdom, one of my favorite books by Peter Kingsley. And I think this might be from that book, In the Dark Places of Wisdom, yeah. So this is what he says about that moment where everything in the outside life and people have failed, and you have to look within, yeah. If you're lucky, at some point in your life, you'll come to a complete end. Or to put it another way, if you're lucky, you'll come to a crossroads and see that the path to the left leads to hell, that the path to the right leads to hell. Exactly. That the road straight ahead leads to hell, and that if you try to turn around, you'll end up in complete and utter hell. Okay? Every way leads to hell, and there is no way out. Nothing left for you to do. Nothing can possibly satisfy you anymore. Exactly. You have to come to that moment. Then, if you're ready, you'll start to discover inside yourself what you always longed for, but were never able to find. And if you're not lucky, you only come to this point when you die, and that won't be a pretty sight, because you'll still be wanting what you're no longer able to have. You see? You come to that moment because there's nothing, absolutely nothing in society that can satisfy this longing, this kind of longing that you have. For something is calling from within. You go to the left, it's no good. To the right, it's no good. Go ahead, it's no good. If you go back, it's even worse. The only way out is in. Yeah. I'll give you a few examples, for instance, from my life. I remember I was at that time living and working in Perth, Western Australia. I only arrived recently from Melbourne. A company brought me over to work in Perth. The job was a disaster. More money, but the way I was treated. I came from an environment in Melbourne where I was practically the manager of running the place. I had apprentices under me. I was training them. When I arrived in New Perth, in the new job in Perth, I was placed to operate a machine. You know, from being a manager to placed to operate a machine. You know, they were putting me in my place. You know, in other words, they were putting me in my place. 2 years I lasted like that. In the meantime, I decided to do a night course. I finished the night course. I got my accreditation, left the job that I hated with that company. Took me a while to find a new one. Finally found one in engineering, mining, supply and engineering. Western Australia is huge in mining, so there's lots of engineering companies. I got a job with the first firm, was fine. I was happy. It only lasted a few months. I got made redundant because the business wasn't doing so well. They managed to find me another job with another company. It was 12 hours a day. 12 hours a day for 4 days, for 4 days off, and 12 hours a day. I hated every moment of it, although I was making twice as much money as I did before. The company was moving, I got another job, and this time I was working 12 hours a day, 4 days off, 12 hours at night, 4 days off, even worse. And again, they placed me in a place where I was just to do one job, manual job. They were putting me in my place. I hated it. So there was nowhere for me to turn. And at the same time, my relationship, 2-year relationship with a beautiful woman fell apart. I walked away because I knew deeply inside of me that it's way too early for me to, get married. I was at that time, how old was I? 24, 23, 4, 5, something like that. It was way too early, you know. She wanted kids and houses and, wanted me to go back to university and finish some kind of degree or something. I was not interested. Already my inner life was far more important. I met the people. I go into this in my book, Where We Dream the Single Dream. It was through her that I met a few people, very deeply spiritual people, that helped me to, to be confident with my own spiritual journey, to help me. One of the persons said, you have to write down your dreams, and that's how it all started. The instructions started to flood in once I started to write down my dreams, my first dream journal and so on. And about that time, where I got I can't go back, I can't go forward because it's hell, I can't go left or right because it's hell. At that moment, I started to have my huge dreams. Yeah, and one of the dreams I share with you, one of the dreams that was probably in '94. I called her my lady soul. Again, this is in the book, Where We Dream the Single Dream. And how it happened was, this wasn't the first dream of hers. She came to me earlier. At that time when I started writing dreams and I started to incubate my energy inward. Intuitively, I knew that I needed to force the energy, my libido, my life force back into my body. Then it's going to grow and flower, and that is the way to that would be the inner self is being reborn, you see, and you can start your inner journey that way. You need to redirect all your energy inward. Like I said, no matter which way you turn, the energy doesn't flow outside anymore. The only way out is in, so you redirect all your energy, your psychic energy, your libido inward. And this is what she said. I knew this intuitively, but she confirmed this to me in a dream. So it's about 3 a.m. Some of you might be familiar with waking up at 3 a.m. It's important. So I woke up about 3 a.m., I think it was, dark in my room. And I opened my eyes, and there she is, right above my face, like this. I was sleeping this way, she would have been on the left, floating. I recognize her face, her large dark eyes, her flowing hair, always wearing white and glowing white like the full moon. She looked at me, and I woke up with a stutter. I couldn't move again. And she says, Marek, don't lose your spirit through sex, and I will show you everything you're looking for. And that's where my journey began. That's when I had huge, huge dreams afterwards. And at about that time, prior to this dream, I started asking the question, work is terrible, relationships are even worse. I find nothing in meaning to myself that is particular to myself or important to myself in this life. There must be more to me, or more to life than this. And I stayed with this question. This was perhaps a few months before I left to travel to Sweden, because I had a dream to travel to Sweden. And in Sweden, I got the answer. The answer was, I was lying on a rock in a forest, up on a rock, symbolic as well. And in that space between dream and awake, I heard the voice again. The inner voice says, "You're Jesus." It doesn't mean I'm their Jesus or incarnation of their Jesus. It just means a Jesus, not what divine. But I didn't understand this. It was too early. So this was 1995. I caught up to this idea of being divine, maybe 10 years ago. So we're talking about, 1994 to 2014. So 20 years later, it takes that long. If you don't study, if you don't take this seriously, because I traveled a lot later afterwards, so I didn't have time. When I returned to Adelaide, I started to take this seriously, started to buy my first books and read, and only clicked then while reading Joseph Campbell's, and I'll go into this in Where We Dream the Single Dream again. It only clicked then that I was a God. I had so many visions and so many experiences of going to the center, a recovery of the soul. But only, when you study, the intuition just bang, and you stare for, seems like hours into nothing, and this vision repeats itself, and that's it. That's what I am. And then you find examples in culture and mythology and fairy tales to support your finding. Anyway, so I'll give you a few examples. This was me. This is how it happens to me. When you find nothing in the outside, you finally have to look within and fulfill your life's destiny. I'll give you a few other examples from culture. This is a good example. When in the first installment of the Star Wars movie in 1979, right? When Luke Skywalker returns to the ranch, to his parents, to his foster parents, and finds the house burned down and his parents killed. This is the time where he finally realizes there's nothing for him to go back to, and the only way for him to move now is to go on this adventure with Obi-Wan Kenobi, with the old man, with the guide. You see? There's nothing there left for him anymore, and he finally goes on that adventure where Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi, teaches Luke Skywalker how to be a Jedi, how to live from the Force, from his own inner resources. So that's one example. Another one of this time when you are faced where the world finally crumbles and you have no other option but to look within, is in that fabulous series from Britain called Britannia. And Britannia is about the invasion, the second invasion of the Romans into Britain. The first invasion was by Julius Caesar, and it failed. And the second one, they came because they wanted to conquer Britain. There's a prophecy by the Druids that a young girl will unite all the separate tribes of Britain and push back the invaders back to the sea. And this young girl doesn't know anything about this, not yet. But we are shown that the Romans have invaded her village, they have burned down her house, killed her mother, killed her sister, her father's missing. She comes there and there's nothing left. So she walks away into the forest looking for her sister, for her family, not knowing that they're dead, and finds an old master, old shaman. He's a bit crazy. What he is actually, he's been thrown out from Druids for being, he was a very, very talented Druid, a very talented shaman. He knows all the sacred plants. You know where I'm going with this. He knows how to reach the gods and how to go into the underworld. He is the master of this, but he has one problem. He gets now and then possessed by a demon called Locker. And so he gets thrown out of the Druids. But by coincidence, if you like, the girl named Kate, she's the heroine of this whole series. She's the one that is chosen by the gods to unite all the tribes but she doesn't know that yet. She finds him, and this is her new teacher for the rest of the series, really, who teaches her how to fulfill her life's destiny. Yeah? So, in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker has Obi-Wan Kenobi. When there's nothing left outside for him to go back to, he finally finds that teacher, that master that is going to teach him what he has to know and fulfill his life's destiny. And Kate, the one that is to fulfill the prophecy of the Druids, that she's going to reunite the tribes and throw the invading army back to the sea. She too comes to her household, nothing's left, all burnt down, there's nothing for her to go back to. She goes into the forest and finds her guide. And her journey begins to fulfilling her life's destiny. Another example might be, for instance, C.G. Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist you might be familiar with. He had a huge inward turning at a time when he broke up with Freud, Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud is famous for his psychotherapy, or rather interpreting dreams. But Freud worked on the personal unconscious level. That is to say, things you have learned during your lifetime. Your mother, your father, your siblings, your job, your place in society. He never went deeper than that. Jung, already by that time, Jung was to be his successor. Jung worked very, very closely with Freud, and Freud taught him, if you like, the interpretation of dreams and psychotherapy from that angle. Jung he was already a doctor, he worked in hospitals and so on by that time. But Jung knew that Freud wants him to be his successor. But Jung by that time already had his own dreams and the dreams of his patients, and he realized that there's deeper, a lot more information coming from the unconscious than just personal. Your mom, your dad, your job, your family, your spouse, your dog. That it's collective, that it's to say mythological images are coming through. And that's what he called the collective unconscious. So Freud deals with the personal unconscious, the things you have learned in your own personal things you have learned during your life. Jung deals with the collective things that are common to all of humanity. The images and the story is exactly the same for all humans, and it's the story of going inward and recovery of your divine part of your soul. You see, going on that adventure, and then, you know, when nothing is left for you to do in the outside life, nothing fulfills, there comes the guide, and you're taken deeper and deeper until you realize your life's destiny of what you really, who you really are, you know, divine. So this is the theme of mythology throughout a whole culture. Yeah, you have the story of the sleeping beauty of recovery of the soul. The night comes and awakens the sleeping beauty and recovers her. One of the oldest stories in mythology is of Inanna going into the underworld and you know, meeting her sister Ereshkigal ghost, the recovery of the soul. You have the story in ancient Egypt. They are the same stories of you know, preparing the dead on the journey to afterlife. And once the weighing of the heart happens, they finally enter the hall of Osiris, the god of the underworld, and there they are being made aware that they too are an Osiris. That is to say, they too are a god, divine. You know, and you have exactly the same images. You have the lady, for instance, that gives water from the tree. You know, pouring water to the departed soul on his journey. So you have the tree of life, you have the water, you have the lady soul, you have going to the center. So this story, you know, it repeats throughout a whole culture. Joseph Campbell made a wonderful book, A Hero with a Thousand Faces, and he talks about this, the monomyth, that this story is just the same story, but it's just tinted with geographical locations, different names, and so on. But it's the same story of the journey inward or recovery of the soul. Yeah. So this is what Jung found out. That there is a deeper dimension to the human psyche, the collective unconscious. And he disagreed with Freud, and he broke up with Freud, and it was a huge drama. He was traumatized by the breakup because Freud didn't want to hear anything about any of this. He wanted Jung just to agree or just to perpetuate the findings of Freud, which were just on the shallower level of personal unconscious. So Jung left Freud. He was so taken back by the breakup that he found nothing of any particular importance to him in the outside anymore. He kept up his daily job at the hospital, but he bought himself lots of books, especially alchemical books, locked himself away. I think it was like 10 years, and that's when he did his work, his inner work. So that's what I mean by this. When you are, so going back to what I was reading about, if you're in the wrong environment, the wrong partner, when all of us have the same destiny of the recovery of the soul. So if you're in an environment where you are ready to go, but your partner's not ready to go, and if they're not willing to learn or let you do your work, so very often the soul will create an environment where the relationship simply doesn't work anymore. There's something else that it's calling you. The soul will kind of rearrange your life in such a way that you have no choice and you have to go. Yeah, eventually you have to go. It took me years to make up my mind. Jung didn't just do it with a snap of his fingers too, because it was a huge decision to give up being the successor to Freud. Freud was, a world celebrity. They traveled together, America, this, that, and the other, conferences. So it took a while for him to agree to actually have his own findings and finally come out with his own findings, his own psychology, the psychology of collective unconscious or the recovery of the soul. So that's what I mean by when I'm saying in this little post that I just read to you that the caterpillar cannot understand the butterfly. There's a lot of pushback when I wrote that belittling some people, calling them caterpillars and the others are butterflies. But in real life, in real everyday life, where you are asked to finally fulfill your life's destiny, that is how it feels. If you don't, you will feel. It's not just you will feel better about it, because you will, but eventually what happens is the soul will arrange your life in such a way that you have no choice. Your relationship will start to break apart. Mine did, because I knew there's something else that it's calling me, and my partner back in the day didn't understand any of this. She knew everything better than what my dreams were telling me. That was one. And then, of course, I got married and so on later in life. But that one was afraid of the unconscious, because, like I said in so many videos already, that when you are open out in the back to the unconscious, to the soul, and you're living in close proximity to others, the energy will jump. And if they're not ready, they're going to have the dreams, they're going to have the archetypal dreams and experiences. And if they're not ready, or if the person perhaps deeply religious, it will frighten them. So sometimes, I moved away to another room eventually and so on, but sometimes that's not enough. You have to let them go and have their own life. And so I write about that in the book as well. So this is what I mean by saying that the caterpillar cannot understand the butterfly. Of course, they will eventually transform from a caterpillar to a butterfly too. But when you're ready and they're not ready, then there's conflict, huge conflict. Okay, so I think I'll stop talking. It's half an hour of me rambling on. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about today. Hopefully I'll make a new video. I'll try to make a video for you once a week, something interesting. I'll leave all the links to what I wrote in the video description and so on. And until the next time, I'll see ya. Bye.